What's up, dudes? Tim Bertram, Bertram Dental Lab, coming back to you on a new case here. Something we haven't touched on yet, a inner strengthener or a mesh strengthener, as some call it, for um, an inner structure on a denture. We're gonna go over this case quick here. We'll start off like we normally do, path of insertion. Looking at the distal here and the distal of this guide. I'm gonna rotate this path of insertion forward. Let's try 4 degrees, rotating towards the anterior to get this a little more squared up. And then I'm looking, balancing left to right this way. I'm going to come maybe 1 degree here. There we go. That looks pretty good. Let's preview that. All right. Pretty simple block out on this one. I'm gonna just looking at this, give you a quick overview. I'm gonna, like we normally do, kind of add a little right here where we're buffering, where this minor connector is gonna meet the mesh right here like we usually would. Also on these shoulders, I'll call them, where the clasp is coming into the guide. We don't obviously need retention or want retention there, so I'm gonna soften that while keeping the top edge of the clasp in contact with the tooth so we don't have a visual gap from above. All right, so first I bring my intensity over here, down, low, 10 microns, add a little bit. Same here. Come up the distal. Like I said, just make that contact, the top edge. Then I'm cranking my intensity up here as I'm working, removing this quickly. This clasp, we've got to take a little bit back, engage that undercut here. And if we want to look at our undercut view, we can hit this color wheel, take a look at the undercut. We'll clear this back a little more on that lingual. And then let's just smoother. We know that these minor connectors are coming up to be tied in. That'll just make our transition to these parts smoother, more even, before we even lay actually any parts on it. All right, so if you've done any mesh style cases in 3Shape, you know there's a common issue. If I were to plot this entire piece as one piece of mesh, generally you're going to have an uneven amount of holes. Like the software will put more holes on one side than the other. It's not always able to balance the mesh work, and it just doesn't always look great. So what we've done as a workaround is split that, and what I like to do is split that as balanced as I can. And this one I actually split it intentionally on the future tissue stop here, because when we add holes in the mesh there later, it'll actually help us blend that, and it kind of naturally blends in automatically. So I'm going to plot this first section of mesh. And I'm keep in mind here we're at our default resin gap of 0.6. And I try to get this, like I said, pretty straight here where I'm going to seam this together. Okay, and that looks nice and even, the amount of holes and spacing. So notice on this side there's, I'll say, like a straight line drawn. We're trying to indicate here that that's a fill within the mesh, you know, a solid piece on the ridge, crest of the ridge. So what I'm going to do is intentionally rotate this, you know, thinking ahead that I'm going to fill those holes on the ridge, the crest of the ridge. So if I center these holes up, it'll just make that way quicker to do going forward. All right, so leave that like that. And let's see if we can pick back up and start, I'll say, seaming this together. All right. And let's try to do the same thing on that ridge. I'll line up here. This is going to be a little tougher just because they're not lining up quite the same. So let's preview that. Okay, so we will bring this back here where we're going to meet up with that future upright. We'll do that as well here. Then let's go next. And we're going to use the rest part. Substructure thickness, as usual, 0.5, wax at 0.4. So it has that little taper down to the edge. And when we do these, I always like to say, think of it like a tree. You don't want this thing narrow. You want it almost like the base of a tree. And that's going to give you that support and strength we're looking for. All right, there we go. So just a quick glance. Areas I would comment right off the bat that I see as a concern for weakness on a strengthener, definitely right here. So we're going to have to do something with that to strengthen this up, and right here for sure. And then you can see obviously where we seam this together to get that balanced meshwork. So I select an acres clasp like we normally do, kind of, I'll say right underneath that drawing. There should be a scribe line from our designers. And I look at this top edge as I bring this in. I'll meet that transition like that. Okay, so 2 acres clasps. We don't need to do a connector, the 1mm connector on those, but we're gonna have some fills. I select my fill piece to gain some strength, but not lose all of our holes. What I'm gonna do is fill this top edge like that. And like what we do on our lower free end saddles, looking at that top edge of this mesh here and meeting with my fill piece. It's okay if you overlap a little bit though. If you need to get additional width this way, but as I come into, I'll say the corner here, I'm kind of lining that up the best I can. Same here, I just want additional strength going to this upright / rest. All right, and then we're going to try to, like we discussed, kind of fill this seam in the middle. And then I'm going to do my main fill on the ridge. This one I'm going to do like this because I know my tissue stop is going to be right here. So I just blend that in a little bit. All right, let's hit this ridge here. All right. So I still feel like this is weak. I'm going to add a little more here, and I'm going to fill this. Actually, you know what? I don't like that. I'm going to delete this, and I'm going to fill this entire section here. This is all going to be covered in acrylic, and obviously we need holes for retention on that acrylic, but right here is our concern. We'll still have plenty of holes here. fill that like that. Same thing over here. I just don't see this being strong enough. There we go. Okay, so this looks strong. We have a little bit of a jog right there. Let's see if I can improve that. Just get this blended or transitioned a little better. That's pretty good. Sometimes these mesh ones are more work just because of the amount of filling that you need to do to get it to look good and function well. Okay, let's preview that. And go to our sculpt. All right, I'm going to be at between 5 and 10 microns here. Bring that up. We're not going to have any finishing lines on this particular case. This is all going to be embedded. I'm just trying to smooth this all out. And when we get to our final sculpt, you know, we'll have our thickness map so we can see our thicknesses. This is just a real quick once over. No finishing line, so we can go next. Okay, there we go. There's our thickness map. So just looking at this, definitely on these uprights, I don't want these to be any weak point. There will be a lot of stress on these, especially holding these entire, you know, posterior saddles with teeth and chewing and all those forces, etc. There's going to be a lot of stress, especially on this upright here when the patient's chewing. So I'm going to make sure we at least have this up to 1 millimeter. That we're in green here. All right. I'm looking at those rests like we normally do, bringing them just up to red/green, kind of right where they're starting to be at that 0.9 to 1 mil in thickness. Again, right here where this meets our meshwork, we want some good strength on this upright as well. All right. All right. And then I'm going to try to just level this fill on the ridge better. You can obviously tell where we did do the filling. Try to bring that up a little more. There we go. All right. Now let's see if we can, with our 2 mil hole, we're going to see if we can disguise this seam a little. There we go, right there. We know that tissue stop is going to go right there, so that's pretty much going to be blended there. Maybe I could get one right here. Let's see. No, that's just going to be too weak. I'm going to put one right here and just kind of break up that bottom edge then. All right. Let's go next. 3mm default tissue stop. We have 3 of them. I'll fade out the frame. I don't see any that we missed. S's and Sam removes the model. We'll go next. Line spacer at 0.05, like always. No stipple. We're good. That's it. Pretty straightforward, but something we don't see all the time. So I just wanted to share that one. Anyways, till next time, guys.